people, as humans, have control in shaping and defining the future. And for a lot of people, they think it's not in their control anymore because of AI. And I always come in, and it's not to make anyone feel better. It is absolutely the truth that we have to double down on what makes us us so that we can create the future that really galvanizes us instead of scares us.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I'm Engage president Jake Olson. Alongside me today, we have Erica Orange. Erica, you are a fascinating individual. You are the executive vice president and chief operating officer of the Future Hunters, which is a world-leading futurist consulting firm. Erica, I only heard the term futurist about a year ago, so I'm assuming some people don't even know what that is. So could you please at least describe in your best words what a futurist is?
Yes, I cannot describe what a futurist is without making the corny joke of I do not have tea leaves or a crystal ball. But really, it's my job to understand how change is unfolding and where it's going, knowing that any trend area always has touch points to others, meaning whether it's sociocultural trends, economic, political, demographic, environmental, political, really, you name it, everything is interconnected. So it's my job to not only see around corners, but to really decipher what those trends are and then ultimately help people understand what they mean and how they can be better positioned to really capitalize on where these things are going.
So you might not have a glass ball, but what you're saying is you do have a pencil and you're playing connect the dots a lot.
That's exactly right. Yep. And it is a pencil because I always say the future is not set in stone and it's going off in so many different directions. And it's funny you say that because one of the biggest skill sets is in the erasing of the lines that no longer are going to matter. So we don't ever want to have a pen to draw our roadmap for the future because we know there's not just going to be one roadmap. It's going off in so many different directions. And all of these directions are happening in almost near real time.
That seems like a very, very, up-to-date job. You gotta be in the know a lot. So kind of tell us what type of groups or audiences would best be suited to hear a futurist. I mean, obviously these can be applied to any industry. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I cannot think of one example, one person, one industry, one anything that the future does not touch. It is happening to us collectively. And it really is all across the board. Many of the companies that I tend to work with tend to be in some of the more traditional industries, but it really is affecting each one of us. And the biggest thing is it just comes down to mindset, and it's mindset shift around how these trends are not only unfolding, but the direct impact that it is going to have across organizations, industries, whether it is in the public or private sector. So those ripples of change are impacting everyone. It's just that those ripples are not uniform, meaning the pace of change is very fast in some areas of our lives and painfully slow in other areas of our lives. So regardless of who I'm talking to, I always say the future is and it's such a silly word and seems like such a simple word to describe the future, but there is going to be tremendous progress in some areas and almost the leapfrogging of technological change and development in certain aspects of our lives and certain aspects of our work. And then at the same time, it's going to be very incremental and there are changes that are going to seem very slow. So to many audiences, again, regardless of industry, I say it almost feels as if we are operating in both 1980 in some ways and 2040 in other ways. And we have to get more comfortable deciphering and living in that ambiguity and just figuring out what that nuance really is going to mean.
This isn't even a question I wrote down, but just, hearing you talk about change, for most people, change is scary. So is there any change that you've come across in your career and maybe even now that you've looked at from a futurist standpoint, just been like, wow, this is scary?
Well, so a lot of my presentations start with kind of getting out the mental cobwebs, meaning one of the biggest impediments, I always say, to understanding where the future is going are the heuristics that we use and the value judgments that we ascribe to. And I always acknowledge that there is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of trepidation out there, and that is normal and it is human nature. But a lot of those value judgments, right, it can be like a security blanket in some ways, or it can be super frightening in some other ways. But ultimately, a lot of what is happening is neutral. Some people might react very strongly to what is happening with whether it's AI or extended reality or all of the different technologies that are out there. At the same time, other people might react to the generational changes that are happening in the workplace and be like, oh, kids these days or the older generation doesn't know what they're doing, right? It's all of these value judgments that then we just need to take a step back, view it through the lens of objectivity and say, if this is what it is, how can we really look at not just what the challenges are? And there are going to be myriad challenges in every trend cohort and segment, but really force ourselves to look at what those opportunities are, knowing that we ultimately, as people, as humans, have control in shaping and defining this future. And for a lot of people, they think it's not in their control anymore because of AI. And I always come in, and it's not to make anyone feel better, it's absolutely the truth, that we have to double down on what makes us us so that we can create the future that really galvanizes us instead of scares us.
And you mentioned that the two single letters there that seem to be everywhere these days, but AI, you do have a new book out, AI plus the new human frontier. So kind of explain how that translates, or I guess you incorporate that into your speaking topics and your speeches.
Yes, so I have been speaking about AI for the better part of the last decade and a half, because very basic AI at the heart of it is not new. It's been integrated into so much of our surrounding ecosystem and more passively affects so many aspects of our lives. But now, because of that pace of change and full in this world of generative AI, it's to demystify what both AI can and cannot do. And I'm always very honest, I am not a technologist. I am someone who is really looking at how technology can shape and inform the human experience. So really my goal in this book was to really rethink and reimagine how we double down on our own unique human capabilities, how we double down on all of those things that make us uniquely who we are, knowing that ultimately the relationship that we are going to have with AI is not just that of massive disruption and disintermediation, right? Those doom and gloom narratives that we hear out there, but rather one in which it can augment so much of how we do what we do. But we're at an inflection point where we really have to think, what are we working around? How are we educating ourselves? What are the skills and competencies that are going to matter? What are the new ways of organizing that are going to be critical, knowing that, of course, the future is still going to be human? We just need to reconceive of what that really means and what that looks like in our organizations.
That's fascinating. You speak on something called templosion. Can you kind of describe what that is and how it affects businesses?
Yes, so this is a term going back almost 18 years when, as a firm, we looked at those ripple effects of change, and we knew that time and time-based value propositions were what were really going to be defining the economic models of the future. So what ultimately that means is that templosion is the idea that the biggest of things, the biggest of events are happening in shorter and shorter periods of time. So not only is our own experience of time in some cases being felt as if we were on steroids, but at the same time, everything is getting so truncated. Time horizons are getting shorter, such that traditional R&D and financial planning cycles, strategic planning cycles, all of these time horizons are going from years to months and in some cases weeks.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of this is being catapulted by the exponential rate of technological change, right? So it almost has a leapfrogging effect where it's creating new business efficiencies. And we're really forced to look at new definitions of what time even is. If technology can free up a lot of our time, and we know that one of the biggest benefits of AI is it can do away with the rote, the mundane, the boring, We're then migrating up to the next higher order value proposition. And it's, okay, how do we tap into our own thinking, knowing that, again, human-based skills and competencies, the time horizons between those are getting shorter, such that 49% of what we know is said to be put onto AI in the next probably 18 months. So it's kind of a hamster and a wheel effect, but it forces us to really rethink, again, how we work, what we are hiring around, what we are rewarding, and knowing that time is going to be a currency.
You kind of spoken a little bit just briefly here kind of about the human experience and what separates us, what puts us apart. One of those kind of attributes I think is trust, and you talk about trust and how much harder it is to trust these days. So kind of explain to us why, and then how can brands kind of put that ability to trust back into the forefront?
Yes, trust is everywhere today, and I made it such a cornerstone of the book because we are seeing the combination of trust and truth decay, such that we are moving into a world where it is not only harder to know who or what to trust, but those lines between what is real, fake, true, and false are starting to blur. And we really have to prioritize trusted human-to-human relationships. Think about how we build communication across distances, how we really kind of make trust the new intrinsic guiding principle. And a lot of that comes down to a clearly articulated corporate vision. What is it that you stand for? What do you represent? What matters to you in the marketplace? What is it that you're cultivating in your employee base and in your consumer base? And really kind of putting the human heart back into a lot of what we do, knowing that kind of the downside of some of these technological tools is that it can erode trust. And because it is getting harder to know what really is true. So that can sound scary, but right, the opportunity in all of this is really just rethinking all of the things that are still sensory and tactile and all of the things that still make us uniquely human.
No, it's really important. Lastly, Erica, I know, again, we talked earlier about how this is applicable to multitude, if not all the industries. Is there an industry that you find most fascinating, or at least you like speaking to the most and kind of studying the most?
I mean, I like working with a lot of the very traditional industries that know deep down that change is coming, that they are on this tidal wave of change, but might be heritage businesses or heritage industries that don't quite know what steps to take. There might be apprehensions to move too quickly into the marketplace from a technological perspective, but there is a deep understanding that evolution and reimagination is necessary to catapult them into what is going to be, in many cases, a very new and different world. So it is less about the industry and more about the audience mindset, those that are open to hearing new perspectives, having their own thinking challenged, and to do away, going back to our very earliest point, with their own value judgments. And one of the biggest things is the difference between learning and forgetting. And we hear so much about getting up on the learning curve and becoming lifelong learners. And the groups I'd love to work with are the ones that understand that forgetting is also going to be necessary to really be able to accumulate the information and the knowledge that is going to help future-proof us now and in the years to come.
All right, Erica, you do have such a wide range of expertise. Tell us kind of how you are able to customize your different talks to the audience that you've been hired to speak to.
Yeah, so I always say my work comes down to answering two questions, the why and the so what. So much of the why starts by contextualizing how we got to this point in time, what really are the big impactful macro changes that are happening in the external environment. So that is the setting of the stage component. Then in the so what, those are the implications and the applications that are really going to impact that specific industry and that specific client. So the tentacles, right, those really pull throughs are customizable for each audience. It depends on who is also going to be in the room. It depends on the functional area. It depends on the level of seniority. And then from there, I will customize some of the key takeaways.
Very well said. Well, Erica, we can see how critical your work is. We live in an ever-changing world, ever-evolving world, so we really appreciate the thought and the time and effort you put into your work, and as you continue to speak and help industries and individuals, companies out, I know we really appreciate you doing that through us. So thank you for being a part of the platform and just for the work you do. If you want to learn more about Erica and her work, please visit letsengage.com. You can check out her profile. But Erica, we really appreciate the time you've given us today and the insight you've given us.
Thank you so much, Jake. I appreciate it.
All right, stay tuned for more Engage Presents.